of the pillars of the Christian faith given to us, conferred to us by Christ, is loyalty. And there's plenty to speak of on the subject matter from the New Testament vantage point and perspective. However, what occurs when people whom do not subscribe to what the New Testament teaches, more specifically to what Jesus commands, they will take Jesus's teachings and turn that concept on its very head, where now, instead of having specific loyalties, they make Christians responsible for being loyal to everyone and everything. That is the implication being put forth by a recent viral interview given by none other than so-called conservative commentator Dennis Prager. It's a clip that has made the rounds through social media in the last couple of days, and we thought that we'd add our 2 cents to the matter because among the other things that need to be testified to is how subversive his comments are and how they actually cut at one of the main tenets of what Jesus Christ taught about his own exclusivity. More on that shortly. We hope that you'll stick with us throughout the entirety of the episode because there's a lot to unpack from this short 2-minute clip. Welcome each and every one of you to this new live stream of Irrespective. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time, my name is Gio. This is my co-host and I am his, and we are also co-belligerents. Jesus.
Good morning, friends. One of the things that I tried to emphasize every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night as we gathered for Bible study and just fellowship around God's Word was the reason why I was bringing a particular topic and the importance of the particular topic that we would be dealing with on that Wednesday night in particular or that Sunday morning. I like to do the same thing here because some of you might be asking, so who cares what Dennis Prager has to say? The thing is that for many Christians, Dennis Prager, even though he has never said this himself, tends to be a voice of biblical instruction for many Christians. How do you know this? I've had conversations throughout the years with many Christians. Some of them, they start the conversation that goes something like, you should listen to Dennis Prager. He has so much biblical insight. He speaks to the body of Christ. Again, I am not sitting here saying that he has claimed to be the voice of God or a voice of God to the body of Christ, but like the body of Christ tends to do on many occasions, they'll turn a voice and say, this is another voice from God to us. Here's what happens. You might say, I have never listened to any of his presentations. I don't know that I know another Christian that listens to or has listened to Dennis Prager. Therefore, I guess I have not been influenced by the teachings of Dennis Prager. You would be surprised how many secondhand information, just like we are concerned about secondhand smoke, we should be about secondhand and third-hand information that reaches us. And then one day when we finally give ourselves over to finding out, where's the fountain of this information that I have somehow embraced? Lo and behold, is something that we would have never thought we were being influenced by that person, that ministry, that fountain of information. So the reason why this topic is important, the reason why we must tackle what he said is because many people believe that Dennis Prager is a voice of biblical instruction for the body of Christ. And whether you have received from him directly or indirectly, it's important that we tackle this issue.
Absolutely. Housekeeping items before we continue, please remember to subscribe, to hit the notification bell, to smash that like button and share our content. We would certainly appreciate you doing that for us. Interact with us in the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube and if you're watching this on Rumble. Do not forget to follow us on the socials, on X at Irrespective77, on TikTok at The Irrespective. And last but not least, do not forget to donate. It helps us to continue to publish this content, to go live, to bring these live streams to you continuously for your edification. There's a QR code that you can scan on the upper left-hand corner of the screen that stays there throughout the transmission, as well as a link in the description box beneath the video player, as we have accustomed to do on these editions. We like to play the entirety of the clip so that we won't get blamed for decontextualization amongst other reasons. There will be people whom, nevertheless, when their prejudices and their bias is showcased to be misplaced, in other words, then they'll still bring up that accusation. But at least the evidence stands on our side and they won't be able to prove that. So what we like to do is we like to play the entire clip first, and then we like to go back from the beginning and isolate each individual point to demonstrate if, in fact, remember, arguments are built up, the foundations of arguments are built up from individual points. If you have a good collective, then you have a good edifice, figuratively speaking. However, if the individual points that make up your argument are faulty, then that building practically collapses. So we're going to hear Dennis Prager appearing on Jeremy Boring's new podcast. This is the former CEO of Daily Wire, a staunchly outspoken Zionist organization whose primary personality is Ben Shapiro, which all of you presumably know about. But then again, many of you also know about Dennis Prager, that even though Christians consider him to be some sort of friend to Christianity, the guy is also an avowed Zionist, which brings up an important point as we begin our analysis of what he is saying here, which you'll notice Tucker Carlson makes an appearance by these people criticizing him. But that's not the essential point. That's not why we're bringing it up. It's what Dennis Prager has to say and what he uses to criticize Tucker's certain ideas. We'll get into that shortly. So please don't get bogged down over their criticism of Tucker Carlson. That's not what we are focused on. We're focused on the principle, so-called, that Prager is using to criticize one of Tucker Carlson's beliefs, which inherently hits away at the exclusivity of Jesus Christ. We'll get to that shortly. But another thing to point out here, an important aspect of all of this that you must keep in the back of your mind is, why is it that Christians continue to have people whom are avowed enemies of Christ? Why do they continue to listen to them and even bring them in as if they were a part of the flock when their faith, their belief system actually antagonizes Christ and his gospel? Well, some might answer, Gio, Jesus, the fact of the matter is that if they don't have a problem with us, we shouldn't have a problem with them. And I would actually contend that Paul's dictum of a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump should be directing, as it were, our procedure here, because you make a great point. Once you let in that leaven, you also let in all the other things that the belief system and the person ends up bringing in. We talked about James Lindsay, for example, recently. Look at the problems that now Christian circles have by making him, as it were, one of us when he was never of us. And I continue to hearken back to what John says. You never, ever wish Godspeed to those whom are not part of the family of the faith, because as John says, you become co-participants in their evil. Here's the short clip. We'll play it through, and then we will comment.
Just yesterday, he said that his only loyalty. Now notice, he used the word only. His only loyalty, not first. His only loyalty is to the American people. Why is that noble? Why is that Christian? That's your only loyalty? I just don't get it. It's a tribal-based morality that I don't relate to.
It's not even a truthful statement. I mean, I don't know Tucker Carlson on a personal level. As an observer, though, he certainly has other loyalties than just to the American people. He's expressed additional loyalties. He said he has loyalty to the United States, which presumably is different than the people. He's obviously got loyalty to his family, one would assume, to his brother very publicly, very obviously. I know people who've worked for him, both at Fox and at his network. When he first started the Tucker Carlson network, he hired a bunch of Daily Wire and former Daily Wire employees. And by all accounts, he shows great loyalty to the people who work for him. So it's not his only loyalty. And I don't know why it would be good if it were his only loyalty. Like you, I'm not even altogether sure what that means or why it would be virtuous for that to be your only loyalty. Uh, but presumably one wouldn't say it unless they at least thought that it sounds like something that would be good if it were true. I don't even think it would be good if it were true, and it very plainly isn't.
Well, isn't that the same as saying my country right or wrong? Uh, I I gave a brief statement to the PragerU team about a week ago, and I said, you know, I'm not America first. I'm morality first. What is good and what is true are my first loyalties. There's a biblical injunction: do not stand by the blood of your neighbor. Does that play a role in Tucker Carlson's moral universe, or is it just American? I wrote a piece a few years ago. Is it America first, or is it America only?
Mm.
And he used the word only. So that's a very, very distressing thing.
So, a
Just-
couple things to point out here. One of the, shall we call it, nonsensical things that comes forth from Prager's commentary on the matter that Boring tries to gloss over as if that weren't bad enough. He notices that it's a problem and that it will come back to hit Boring and Prager over the head. He has to now couch Prager's comments by stating, I've been aware of Tucker and we've moved in similar circles, and he hired former Daily Wire people and he's been very loyal. So when he says he's only loyal to the United States, that has to be, as it were, buoyed by the evidence of other things. But
If I'm
here's
Prager, I'm thinking, you just arose against my thesis, against my presentation, because that's
Right.
exactly what he did.
right. But Boring knew that it would be problematic for that statement just to stand out there, as it were, in the ether. Because let's face it, when a person like Tucker Carlson, we are not going to sit here and defend Tucker. Tucker speaks for himself. We speak for ourselves. But I think if you were to say to me, or if I were to say to you, my only loyalty is to my country, does that automatically mean, would you understand that of me to mean, or would I understand that to mean of you, that you mean, oh, so he doesn't care for his wife? He doesn't care for his children? He doesn't care for other things that he has loyalty to? Come on, that's just a childish argumentation. And I think one would think that Prager, being this guy whom is supposedly filled with wisdom and
He's a thinker.
knowledge, and exactly, you know what it is, that he takes that sort of millennialist, shall I say, sort of interpretation for these things to undercut Tucker's argument is frankly stupid.
So Prager is considered a thinker. That makes this statement, that makes what he has done here malicious. Because he's obviously playing with the words, that he knows exactly what Carlson was trying to say, but he chose to twist it. What do I mean? Let's just say that you and I are having a conversation about marriage. We are including in our conversation the Mormons and their inclinations to polygamous married life, a polygamous married life. And I say something to the effect of, I am faithful to my only wife, only to her. Have I stated that I have no faithfulness or loyalty to my country, to my kids, to many other things that I feel I am being called to be loyal to? For Gio to take my words and say, you said that you're only loyal to your wife, therefore it must mean, it has to mean that you're loyal to nothing else,
That's
or
not
that
the-
you have a split system of being loyal that is so strange that I must denounce you.
That wasn't the context of the conversation.
Exactly.
To the point.
And so, if the topic is, what nation am I going to be loyal to? And this is the nation that houses you. You should be loyal to the nation that houses you. Now, I hear it all the time, and so do you. We hear statements like, oh, that group, those people in particular over there, those are Mexican Americans, and those are Italian Americans. Oh, and those over there, they are French Americans. And then when you ask, why can't they just be Americans? They go, no. Don't focus in on that, because the only reason we mention Mexican American, Italian American, Cuban American is for the purpose of demographics and identifying people and their purposes. And then you have a situation where the country that houses you enters into some kind of discord with the nation that birthed you. And all of a sudden, the real colors come out.
Right.
And it seems, we've seen it here all the time,
Yep.
that you pull not for the nation that is housing you,
Correct.
but for the nation that saw your birth or your parents' birth.
That's a form of spiritual adultery when you think about it.
And so, if you, most especially if you chose to come to a country, how much more if you were born here and are living here, you're still housed in the place that saw you come to existence. Your first loyalty, your highest loyalty, your principal loyalty, you look for the words that help you understand this, is to the place that houses you. Otherwise, you're exploiting the place that is hosting you.
Yep.
You are just an opportunist. Now, does the house, the nation, the place that is housing you and hosting you, does it mean that it's perfect? No, but it's worthy of your utmost loyalty in order for people like you, me, the people that are housed here, in order for us to make it better. We see the defects, we see the errors, we see the things that must be corrected, but it doesn't change my loyalty. My wife has many defects. I have many defects. My loyalty to her is not even moved in the slightest just because I see her defects or she sees mine. We work towards helping each other out. So for me, what Prager has said and the explanation that he is giving you, this is malicious.
This is why I use the term millennialist, and let me explain that a bit. Something has happened in the ensuing generations where things that were normally common sense and didn't need to be broached, that has been lost, in part because of the hardness and cruelty that we have begun to see in the United States unfold throughout the past few decades, and the fact that parents haven't really done a good job of educating their kids on conversation, conversationalism, topics, etc., all these other things. So poor is the human interaction amongst the younger generations that what was already presumed in conversation, just like you were talking about, we're talking about one context here. We're not talking about anything else. The context, according to what Prager and Boring are mentioning here, even though Boring tries to rescue Prager in some way, shape, or form, he did a bad job of it because the statement is as ridiculous as it gets. Prager takes something that Carlson never meant to say and now tries to impugn Carlson's character by saying, how can he say only? He was only talking about the context of whatever clip they pulled. He was talking about the love for his nation and for his people. Okay, he wasn't talking about his marriage, wasn't talking about his kids, et cetera, et cetera. But this is something that the younger generations tend to do, where whatever you don't say, they suddenly say, but why did you say this? That's not what I said. I'm talking about this in this context, very specific to that conversation. Right, but that's not what I heard. Well, you may have thought you heard what you heard, but what I meant to say was this. In other words, Prager he does something that he himself has criticized in the modern generation. And this is why I'm glad you mentioned it. It is downright malicious for him to do so. You can't go around misrepresenting a person's views and then impugning them based on a misrepresentation of what that person says. That's downright evil.
It's an inconvenient truth for Prager, because his concern and the concerns of the Zionist is, if the American people focus in on their first duty, which is America first, what happens to our plans
Right.
and the way we use America to get any and all things Israel first.
Right.
And so it's an inconvenient truth, and he needs to find a way to demonize what Carlson said. Again, I'm not defending Carlson. He can defend himself.
Right.
He is more than capable. My topic is loyalty and how this guy has decided that loyalty, he didn't say it, but then again, it's couched in his words, is something that you can just spread around. I'll give you another example. Let's just say that Gio and I are talking about religion, faith. And I say, my only loyalty is to Jesus. And Gio goes, how can that be noble? How can that be Christian? Wait a minute. If that's not noble and it's not Christian, that means that I must have some loyalty reserved for Buddha and for Muhammad.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I will come back and say, Gio, but I just told you that I am loyal to my wife. So don't take my conversation out of context and all of a sudden make it seem like being loyal to Jesus is something reckless, is something evil. There's something wrong. There's something malignant about it when it's actually something that I am called to do.
Right.
So this, my friends, you see what he does with the word loyalty and what he does with the word only. And he uses it to, I suppose, Gio, at the end, and this is just my opinion, somehow get less people to listen to the people that he thinks, in this instance is Carlson, get less people to listen to that opinion because it's not convenient for his plans. He's not necessarily talking about the morality, which he said for him is more important than love for a nation.
Exactly.
Because if we're talking about morality, it's very moral, highly moral to love the nation that houses you. If a people take you in, if a family takes you in, you must show them loyalty. If you are adopted, and all of a sudden curiosity hits you to the point that you must find out, who is my real dad? Who is my real mom? And you do find out who your dad is, who your mom is, talking about birth parents. If you decide that you're going to love those people more or equally than the people that housed you and fed you and instructed you and made you the person that you are, I think you're less of a human being than you think you are. And you've got your loyalties placed incorrectly. Yeah, but they just made a mistake. They're still my mom and my dad, and I'm showing love for them. I'm not telling you not to love them and to forgive them.
Yep.
But your loyalty has to be to that man, to that woman that brought you into their life, to that family that housed you and fed you and kept you. That's your main loyalty. It doesn't mean that you don't have other families and other people that you love also, but your loyalty. In other words, if pushed to decide, let's make it very blunt, if pushed to decide between the people that abandoned me and the people that adopted me,
Right.
I think the moral thing to do, if pushed to that place, is to say, I am going to be loyal to the people that took me in.
Here's a couple more things to keep in the mind as we continue to give our comments on the matter. Number one cannot ignore that one of the primary reasons, and you had just alluded to it not too long ago, that Prager brings forth this commentary but disguises the true intentionality of why he comments the way he comments is because he, being a Zionist, takes direct aim at one of the principal figureheads of the movement in America against American support for Zionism. That's important to keep in the back of the mind, and I'll explain why in just a few moments. Number two, some of you might be asking, well, Gio, doesn't necessarily, as you said earlier, attack at the very exclusivity of Jesus. I didn't explicitly hear any mention of gospel items or Christian ethics from Prager. Well, let me ask you a question. When he begins to quote from the Old Testament and he says there's a part of the Bible that says this, is he not getting into theological territory? Not only that, the Bible has plenty to say, and we'll read a couple of texts about the order of loves. Allow me to remind the audience of something that happened not too long ago where the Vice President of the United States gave a comment on the concept that Catholics would call ordo amoris. Now, a couple of aclaratory things. First and foremost, We are not endorsing Catholicism here. Furthermore, I frankly can't stand the fact that a lot of people say that this is Catholic theology, because one of the people that we're going to read is necessarily considered a part of the, shall we say, hierarchy of Catholic doctrine, even with all of its contradictions and how it contradicts Christ himself. The Catholics will say that they were the ones to first, as it were, expose the idea, but you didn't need the Catholics to arrive at what we're going to arrive at, because the Apostle Paul and Jesus, way before the Catholics showed up on the scene, already talked about the order of loves. The thing is, you needed to properly point out the texts in the canon to showcase that the Bible does, in fact, talk about the order of loves. What is the order of loves? Well, if you want to kick it back to the Old Testament, let's go there. God tells Israel, you shall love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, strength, and spirit.
Yes, he does.
But then you'll notice that in the rest of the 10 commandments, there are specifically allusions to other things that you have to demonstrate love. So far from God saying, you're only going to love me, no, God orders you to love him first and foremost, but then God also says that there is a distinct order in things. You have God, you have your wife or husband, you have your children, you have your family, and it moves down from there. So there is, as it were, a concept in this. Thomas Aquinas, he is quoted as saying this: now the order of nature is such that every natural agent pours forth its activity first and foremost on the things which are nearest to it. That's a fact. Therefore, we ought to be most beneficent toward those who are most closely connected to us. Now, to prove the point, where is Aquinas getting this concept from? We have two texts in particular. There are others. But for example, Galatians 6:10, Paul writes, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of the faith.
Especially.
1 Timothy 5:8. But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, seems to me like there's an order, a pecking order here that Paul is establishing in both of these texts. He has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. This also leads me to believe that if I start worrying about other things and not my family first, then my loves necessarily are disordered. So even in knowing this, and I know Prager knows this, Prager has to know this, but his antagonism against Carlson and what Carlson is standing for, in a sense, is so much that now he chooses to reject this entire concept and now take the biblical concept, the New Testament concept, as it were, of ordered love, and say, in essence, implicitly, I heard it, pretty sure the audience has heard it, I'm pretty sure you heard it also. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I heard it. In essence, he's saying that this whole concept of orderly love, or an order to your loves, is really not a biblical thing in any way, shape, or form. And that, to me, is a direct attack on what Christ taught and also his apostles taught on the way that we should live in a Christian manner.
For me, friends, loyalty is something that shows up when I am faced with a situation as to how am I going to deal with something or someone that I must be faithful to. I'll give you an example. Christ tells us that we must be faithful even to the point of saying to death, go ahead and take my life, but I will not deny Christ.
Right.
So if I would have been the one to say, I am faithful to America only, it doesn't mean that I don't love other nations. But if I'm taken to that place where I must choose, one nation goes first, it has to be the nation that I am loyal to. You see, I'm loyal to my wife. She's loyal to me. That just stays there, stationary, in a protection mode until somebody tries to invade that.
Yes.
And once that invasion comes in, then it must come to the front. But if at that moment where it's invaded, where it's tested, I go, well, torn between two lovers, feeling like a fool, and I, bring out that silly song, and me and Mrs. Jones, you're an adulterer.
Right.
And so, again, for me, this is malicious because he's just toying with words, and he knows exactly what was meant. And if push comes to shove, then your loyalty to the person, the idea, the philosophy, the doctrine that you know you owe yourself to must come to the forefront. And if you don't, then I fail to see the morality
Right.
in what he is teaching, because that is reckless. And I'll say it one more time, knowing that he understands the issue, not only is it reckless, it's malicious.
Allow me to condense, in a sense, the primary idea here, because we've said a lot of things. I'm not discounting what we said, because this has an awful lot of roots and branches that we need to nip lest they become more problematic, as is the case with comments such as these. But I mentioned earlier that there are two things at play here. You can't forget the intentionality behind these things. Number one, Prager's a Zionist. He sees how the support that Israel, obviously he being a Jew, obviously he being an avowed Zionist, he sees that that is under threat, where now, especially evangelicals whom have supported Israel for the longest time, are now beginning to say, nope, that's
and
diminishing.
supported him.
And supported him as an example.
Do some research as to how many evangelicals support Dennis Prager, and
Exactly.
you know exactly who he's talking to and what he's trying to preserve. And this is what I believe you're alluding to.
That's exactly right. So you begin to see that now the support that he's been getting, the money he's been getting, and people whom he wants to support his preferred causes are now beginning to diminish, and he's trying to rescue that in some way.
So you're being manipulated.
Right.
If you're listening to this guy and you don't see this, is because the manipulation is working.
But then we also introduce this other aspect into it, and I bring it up again because it's important. This becomes one of the problems when Christians start saying of people who subscribe to an antagonistic view of Christ, as is the case with Judaists, just like Prager, and we've profiled him in the past. Remember that in a recent episode, in a recent live stream, we criticized him because he sees Christianity as nothing more than utilitarian for Zionism. So you have to look at that in the lens of what he believes, and that is the case here. Folks, Judaism, as we have already explained, as we have taught before, has a very, very, very negative view of Christ, probably more so than even Islam. And Islam is an enemy religion of Christianity in a sense, but Islam at least considers that Jesus was a prophet. In Judaism, Jesus Christ, as I've said before, in the Talmudic tradition, he is burning in a vat of excrement in hell. That's what the Talmud teaches. As a matter of fact, you talk to any Orthodox Jew who wants to be honest, and they'll tell you that even saying that name is a curse to Jews. It's like a curse word, and they'll spit on the ground. A person that believes this, suddenly lecturing Christians on issues of Christian morality, don't you think that their preferences for things against Christ are going to take over and are going to color their comments in this direction? This is why, more than anything else, yes, Tucker Carlson was the window dressing. But in fact, at the very epicenter of this is his preference, his primary love for his people, for the Jews, for Zionism, et cetera, et cetera. But here's a guy that has that. He tries to hide his preferences, but then he tells Christians like you and me, no, you can't have this order of loves. Tucker Carlson, as an avowed Christian, cannot have these order of loves, because he's trying to preserve, as it were, the gravy train that he has been enjoying, and also whom he takes that gravy train and directs the attention and money to.
I'll say it again. He's manipulating people. He's a manipulator.
Exactly.
By the way, I want to thank the audience for sharing our content on debunking Jonathan Cahn.
Yep.
We do appreciate all the support that we get from you in the form of prayers, and those of you that send in your financial support.
Too bad we won't get to see new moons. We criticized them, and there are no more red moons. And
But when you share our content, that really means a lot to us. That means that somehow, some way, we have helped you with some information that you think is worthy, that you believe others should have and should listen to. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Absolutely. One last thing before we sign off. Again, be very, very careful with whom you yourself. Look, one thing that we have stressed throughout the years is that it doesn't matter the number of people that give attention to a personality or group. You yourself, as an individual Christian, have the responsibility to examine things. The crowd, there's an old saying that our parents, I remember you guys teaching us this when we were younger, and it is a very succinct point. if everybody were to throw themselves off a bridge, you're also going to throw
Never
yourself
heard of
off
that.
And it seems we have forgotten that basic lesson. Just because a large number of people whom profess to be Christians flock to someone whose idea is actually antagonistic to Christ, it doesn't mean that you have to do the same. Well, that is the reason that we bring these things up. Notice how, under the guise of so-called biblical morality, he actually turns morality on its head and even goes against, as it were, what Christ teaches us with respect to loving God, loving our families, loving our neighbors, etc., etc., etc. A lot of people, they need to see the fangs and the blood to say that person is evil, but the evil, as it were, and malignity, as it were, comes in many different shapes and
So
forms.
we've come full circle. The reason why we tackle the issue, I said it at the very beginning, is because so many people directly and indirectly listen to Dennis Prager. You have to decide, is that statement he made correct? Does it stand on biblical or a biblical foundation, or have these two debunked what he has said and shown it for what it is?
Faulty. It's
Faulty
absolutely.
and malicious, and it has the purpose of
And
manipulating
even
people.
opportunistic. That's another term that we can use in all of this. So we hope this helps you out, folks. We remind our audience that our next transmission will be on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, we want to thank you for sharing our content. For those of you that might be new to what we're publishing, we go live every Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we have today. Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is our next transmission. We encourage you, please help share this content with others. If you have been edified, if you have been informed by what we are offering, don't be afraid to share this. I know we've had people tell us, boy, the stuff, the beans that you guys are spilling on these sorts of things. I've got family members and I've got friends that for example, they love Prager. Well, maybe this is a good resource to
Well,
send
may
to
I
them.
suggest you gather some friends, play this for them, and then have a conversation about it.
Exactly.
Because once you do this, at least you're being honest with yourself and with your friends, and just have a go at it.
Exactly.
He says this; these two are saying the opposite. What do we think? And have a conversation about it.
Exactly. Do not forget to subscribe, to hit the notification bell, and also to click on that thumbs up button. And lastly, once again, share our content with others. We certainly appreciate that. And last but not least, do not forget to donate. For those of you that have been donating for your patronage, we are very, very thankful. For those of you that are going to donate, we thank you for your consideration. There's a QR code in the upper left-hand corner of the screen that you can scan. Conversely, there is a link that you can tap on or click on, depending on what medium you're using to watch this, either your phone or your computer, to be led to PayPal services, which processes those donations for us. Again, once again, thank you for your consideration.
A word of admonishment: if you're driving in certain parts of Florida and you see Tiger Woods, pull off the road.
The highest likelihood is that the guy is on something and he's about to hit your car. maybe if he hits your car, you could yell, "4!"
I mean, it's been a heavy topic, so maybe a little levity
That's right.
might be another way to close one of these editions.
My understanding is that both Cadillac and Range Rover have said, sell no more vehicles to this guy. He's giving us a bad name. That's all time we have left. Thank you for watching. Until the next occasion, Godspeed.